Welcome back to the Hawks Adventures podcast. We've covered the failures, the taxonomy, the pipeline, and the exact prompt architecture behind it. Today's episode is the one that, when I first read the article, I didn't expect to find interesting, and then I did. We're talking about the database, the metadata architecture behind the Vault of Ages catalog. My guest is back, and I want to start with the line from the article that reframed this entire topic for me.
It is the least glamorous part of the workflow and the part most people would never build. It is also the part that makes the catalog a product rather than a folder of images.
That distinction, product versus folder, let's start there.
A folder of images is something a creative project produces. A product is something a commercial catalog requires. The difference is findability, usability, and commercial clarity. A buyer licensing images for a tabletop RPG supplement cannot scroll through hundreds of thumbnails to find what they need. A publisher licensing for interactive fiction needs to know which images are print eligible, which are portrait eligible, which carry commercial use rights. A developer building a configurator interface needs structured data, not file names, not subjective labels, not a folder organized by vague category. Without consistent metadata, a large catalog is difficult to search, difficult to license, and almost impossible to present programmatically. With it, the same catalog becomes a structured commercial archive that can be queried, filtered, configured, and delivered.
Walk us through the database architecture itself. Every image resolves to a record in a central table.
WP_Hawks_images. One record per image. Unique image ID as the authoritative identifier. Everything else, file names, variants, derivative files, different resolutions, resolves back to that record. The database is the source of truth. The file name is just a pointer.
Why does that design decision matter at scale?
Because files change. You rename them. You generate new variants. You resize for different platforms. You create a print resolution version, a web resolution version, a portrait cropped version. If the file name is the authoritative identifier, every one of those operations is a potential data integrity problem. If the database record is the authoritative identifier, none of those operations touch the underlying asset. You can do anything you want to the files and the catalog record stays intact.
The image ID format, alphanumeric only, no hyphens, no underscores. That sounds like a small detail.
It prevents an entire category of lookup failures that occur when ID formats are inconsistent across a large dataset. At 50 images, inconsistent ID formats are annoying. At 500 images, they are a systematic search problem. At catalog scale, any inconsistency that can compound will compound. The format rule exists to prevent that from happening in the first place.
What gets recorded in each image record? You break it into two categories: scalar fields and child table entries.
Scalar fields describe the image as a single entity. Primary subject, scene type, environment, composition, lighting style, shot distance, view angle, orientation, aspect ratio. A museum-style factual description. Accessibility data, alt text written to literal accessibility standards, and a set of commercial eligibility flags, showcase status, print eligibility, portrait eligibility, marketing eligibility, Art Pack inclusion.
You make a point of separating description from alt text, and you call it a system rule, not a suggestion. Why does that distinction matter enough to enforce?
Because they serve completely different functions and are written completely differently. A description is factual prose about what the image depicts, the subject, the scene, the historical context. Alt text is a literal accessibility statement of what a screen reader needs to convey to someone who cannot see the image. If you use the description as your alt text, you are giving screen reader users a prose paragraph when they need a functional label. If you use the alt text as your description, you're giving buyers a terse, functional tag when they need to understand what they're licensing. They are not interchangeable, and the system enforces that as a data integrity rule.
Child table entries, the multi-value attributes.
Keywords, moods, historical elements, secondary subjects, notable objects, context tags, audience assignments, and use cases. Each one lives in its own table, linked to the image ID. Each one is validated against a canonical vocabulary of allowed values, and this is where the validation system becomes critical.
Let's talk about the validation system. 3 tiers. Walk us through them.
Tier 1 is direct visual validation, fields that can be verified against the image itself, subject, composition, lighting style, environment, architecture, scene type, are validated by direct comparison between the metadata record and the actual image content, a record that says the primary subject is a Roman officer when the image clearly shows a gladiator is a proposed update, not an acceptable discrepancy. The image is the authority. The record has to match what is actually visible.
Tier 2.
AI-suggested fields requiring human review. Commercial fields, audience assignment, showcase status, print eligibility, marketing eligibility, cannot be verified visually. You can't look at an image and objectively determine whether it's marketing eligible. The system generates proposed values for these fields and marks them explicitly as AI suggested, requiring human confirmation before they enter the record. The system never auto-applies commercial metadata. It proposes, a human decides.
That's a significant design choice, building human review into the commercial metadata layer.
It's a business decision as much as a technical one. Commercial metadata is what drives licensing. If the system auto-applies marketing eligibility to an image that shouldn't carry that flag, you have a commercial exposure problem. The human review layer exists because the cost of a wrong commercial flag is higher than the cost of the review step. That asymmetry drives the design.
Tier 3.
Structural and database validation. Image ID format compliance, null detection, blank detection, enum validity, checked mechanically against schema rules. An image ID containing a hyphen fails format validation regardless of how good the image is. Required field containing null is flagged for resolution regardless of the image's quality. These are not judgment calls, they are rules, and the system enforces them without discretion.
What does the validation system output?
2 things: a structured JSON report of every field's status with explicit reasoning, and a set of SQL statements for manual review. Nothing is auto-executed. Every proposed change is human-reviewed before it touches the database. That design principle runs through the entire system. The system proposes, a human decides, the database records the decision.
You have a section in the article about anti-hallucination design. This is directly parallel to the audit prompt from episode 4.
Same principle, different context. An AI system asked to fill in metadata for an image will produce values for every field, including fields where the image provides no evidence. Footwear not visible in the image becomes Roman caligae because that is the most plausible Roman footwear. Architecture partially out of frame becomes a specific architectural type because the evaluator inferred it from context. These inferences are frequently wrong and, at catalog scale, frequently wrong compounds into systematically wrong metadata.
And the solution is the same as in the audit.
Unspecified. If a value cannot be determined from visible image evidence, the correct entry is unspecified, not a guess, not an inference, not the most plausible option. Unspecified is a valid, searchable state. A buyer can filter for images where footwear is unspecified and understand exactly what that means. An invented value that is wrong gives the buyer a false confidence that corrupts their search results. The principle is consistent across every layer of the system. Visible evidence overrides inference. Inference without visible evidence produces no entry.
Let's talk about the commercial payoff, because this is the episode where the infrastructure connects directly to the revenue model. The Vault of Ages Art Pack Configurator.
The configurator is the interface that sits on top of this system. It is what makes the catalog navigable and licensable for the tabletop RPG designers, game developers, interactive fiction writers, and historical content creators who are the catalog's primary commercial audience. A buyer can filter by scene type, subject, composition, mood, historical period, commercial eligibility flag, and resolution tier, and get results that are accurate because the metadata behind them is accurate. The configurator is only as good as the database that powers it. The database is only as good as the validation system that maintains it.
For a content creator who is building an image catalog right now and thinking, I don't need this level of infrastructure, what is the cost of not building it?
At 50 images, you don't need it. You can manage 50 images manually. At 200 images across multiple historical periods and several licensing tiers, you have a search problem. At 500 images, you have a commercial liability. You're selling licenses on a catalog you can't reliably query, filter, or audit. The time to build the metadata system is before the catalog grows past the point where retroactive organization becomes the project itself. The same principle applies here as in the pipeline article. Build it before you need it, not after you've generated 1,000 images without it.
That's the through line of this entire series, really. Build the system before you generate the content.
At every layer. Build the audit prompt before the first image. Build the metadata system before the catalog outgrows manual management. Build the corrective reprompting workflow before you have a backlog of rejected images with no organized path to correction. The work of building the system feels like overhead when you're doing it. It feels like infrastructure once it's running. The difference between those two things is scale, and scale happens faster than most creators expect.
The Vault of Ages Art Pack Configurator is live at hawksadventures.com. Commercial license is available for tabletop RPG supplements, game modules, interactive fiction, campaign settings, digital and print publications. Next episode, the final one, we take everything we've built and ask the question that every creator working outside ancient Rome has been waiting for. What does AI get wrong about Vikings, feudal Japan, and ancient Greece? And how does the same 3-stage pipeline fix it? We'll see you there.
That one closes the loop. Everything in this series has been pointing toward it.